Hello, everybody, and welcome to my own personal hell. I am Shannon Q, and this is Qsplaining. I would like to welcome everybody here today. Let me know in the live chat if you can hear me. Hopefully, you can. Had some sound issues last time. Hoping they're rectified. Fun story for anybody who watched the last stream. Turns out I have almost 5 different microphone inputs that were on my audio mixer, and I have them all muted but one now, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me. Please let me know. So today we are going to be, once again, talking about NCCA certified Christian counselors. We are going to be using my bestie best friends from Above and Beyond Christian Counseling Ministries as an exemplifier of this particular standard. Now, last time we had a conversation about the Arno profile system, which is the personality, I'm gonna air quotes again, personality profile system that they utilize at initial assessment when somebody comes in to be counseled for their mental health through this Christian counseling model, and why it's nonsense. If you are interested in hearing that so that you're primed for this series, I will put a link above here somewhere. When the TARDIS takes us to the future version of this reality, it should be up in this corner over here so that you can go back and listen to it. There was unfortunately some sound issues. There was some doubling in my audio and some sound issues for the output. I've done everything I can to rectify that. If it's still persistent, then it's just God's will, and we're all going to have to deal with it, unfortunately. But I think I got it. So to give everybody a brief summation, one of the things that I do is I cover Christian counseling and some of the problematic aspects of Christian counseling. I do have a How to Be a Christian Counselor series that is edited videos. The future version of me will hopefully link that playlist above too. I have moved away from the NCCA certified Christian counselors and moved on more to the broader Christian counseling model. But I didn't want to forget our friends, because there's a lot to cover. So I decided to do this live stream series so that we could cover all of the specific aspects in a shorter breadth of time than it would take me to do the edited series. So today we are going to be covering Ungodly Soul Ties. I'm going to apologize for my demeanor throughout. When I do the edited videos, it's a little bit easier for me to take takes so that I can adjust my cadence and my tone. I'm not going to be able to do that live, and some of this is frustrating to me. I'm going to try to remain impartial in my delivery, but it's likely that I'm probably not going to, because a lot of this it's kind of infuriating and ridiculous. The NCCA counseling model is a model that I think is worth covering. I don't really see anybody else doing it, unfortunately, and it's prevalent, especially in the day and age in America where the spiritual advisor to the president actually subscribes to this specific theological perspective that there's a demonic realm that can actually have a physiological effect on your body and have an effect on your soul consciousness. And there's a business model built around this particular mental health model that is problematic. So today we're going to cover Ungodly Soul Ties. And if everybody's ready. Oh, what does NCCA stand for? The National Christian Counseling Association. I'm sorry, I should have specified that. Oh, also to let you know, I just saw that in the live chat. I do my best to kind of glance over to the live chat. But as I'm going, I'm likely not going to stop my momentum unless there's something definitely wrong with audio, for example. Like last time, sorry. But if you have questions, I'm going to read them at the end. So if you could kind of hold them in your mind and tag me when I queue for questions at the end, that would be great. If you super chat them, they will aggregate, but I don't want to just answer super chat questions. Not everybody is able to donate to the channel, and I don't want to leave everybody out. This is an ongoing conversation. So I'll give you a brief overview right now of what Ungodly Soul Ties are, as it pertains to the mental health model that is utilized by the NCCA Christian Counseling Association, which is the governing body that provides the PhDs, air quotes, I'm going to do an air quotes shirt, the PhDs and counseling degrees to the people that are becoming Christian counselors. They see Ungodly Soul Ties as something that allows an opening to the demonic realm to let spirits into you that affect your behaviors. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but there are people that subscribe to this model and genuinely feel as though that's the affect that's causing them to have mental health issues. So it's important for us to address it. Above and Beyond Christian Counseling Association is one of the more prevalent Christian counseling associations. They're located in Florida. They have several offices in Florida. They have a YouTube channel with more subscribers than mine, over 20,000 subscribers, and they post weekly. And they cover a lot of these aspects. So I'm going to be utilizing them to demonstrate this for you. So without further ado, who's ready for the bullshit? There, that was me being impartial. Sorry. That's who's ready to hear about ungodly soul ties. Here we go.
Ungodly soul ties. This is the model that we use and we'll see quite frequently in our teachings. This is what a typical Christian looks like. We are a three-part being: body, soul, and spirit. Body, or our physical container, if you like, hair, skin, teeth, and bones. Our soul, our mind, will, memory, and emotions. And we have a spirit man. And when we're a born-again believer, and we can see that this is a Christian because they have the Holy Spirit living in them, then we have a new spirit living in us.
Okay, so before we transition on, I'm going to, just to let you know if you're new here, the way that I'm going to go through this is I'm going to pause the video after each. Essentially what they have is a slideshow going on. So this is the way they see a human. This is the way they see us. So there's the body. So there's only a couple demons in the body. These, the little orange guys, these are demons. These are demons that can get into you in a multitude of ways. They'll let you know what those ways are. The ungodly soul ties are one of the ways. There's many. There's many ways. The center of this is the Holy Spirit. They see the Holy Spirit as being at the center, the core of you. It's incorruptible, but the remainder of you is corruptible and can allow in this demonic influence that affects you. So they're essentially taking away a portion of your autonomy and allowing you to perceive issues that you may have as being externally influenced. Like you're essentially, to a certain degree, partially possessed, except for they don't see it as possession because it's not entirely taking you over. It just allows influence over your thoughts. And there's a myriad of types of these demonic influences that can penetrate yourself and cause these influences, but only if you let them, only if you engage in sets of behaviors or actions or thoughts, even just thoughts that allow these doors to open. And the only way to get rid of these is via deliverance counseling or deliverance ministry. You can't change your behavioral patterns and get them away. You can't change yourself. You need to have some sort of intervention from the spirit realm to remove the corrupted portion of you that's attributed to the spirit realm. So hopefully everybody's clear on their model of humanity and thought and how it influences behaviors and the standpoint that they're coming from with regards to this. So I'll keep going. This isn't the part that makes me mad. Well, it makes me a little mad, but there's parts that make me madder, and they're coming up soon.
And also the Holy Spirit. But we can also be tormented and oppressed by demonic spirits that we need deliverance from. And we've been talking about entry points for demonic strongholds. There are any number of them: generational sins and curses, word curses, sins that are committed against us. And then there's an element of sins that we commit that can open the door for demonic torment. And today we're going to talk about ungodly soul ties.
Okay. So these are some of the other ways that you can have a demon influence your behaviors and your thoughts. I very much dislike the removal of autonomy and personal accountability in this model. I'll preface this by saying I'm not a clinician. I have a degree in psychology. It's a bachelor's degree. I didn't study therapeutic practices. This isn't, so anything that I say isn't to be taken as a therapeutic professional or counseling professional's opinion. These are just my perspectives. But what they're doing is they're removing somebody's personal accountability and autonomy from the therapeutic process and attributing it to them engaging in non-conforming behaviors. So if you're deviating from the behavioral model that they've set as a standard, which is an almost unattainable standard, you're opening yourself up for bad things to happen to you. That's the message that they're sending. They're essentially saying, if you don't live your life in a very stringent and exactly mandated fashion, then bad things are going to happen to you, and only we can help you, because you won't be able to help yourself. This is something that requires an intervention. That's dangerous. If something bad has happened to you, you need to be able to learn coping mechanisms to be able to work through those thoughts and the behaviors that manifest as a result of those thoughts. If you are the person who's potentially acting out, or you want to change your behaviors, you need to learn new strategies to deal with your emotions. Attributing them to outside sources isn't the way to do that. It's just not. So I'm going to briefly kind of go over what these bullet points are. I'm not going to cover them in depth right now because I'll likely cover them later. Generational sins and curses. Generational sins and curses are, if you, let's say, had a great-great-grandfather who was homosexual, or aunt or uncle who was homosexual, your homosexual thoughts would be attributed to a generational curse that allowed a demon to essentially go through your family lineage and land in you. Not even through something that you did, but through something that somebody who is related with you down the line is. Word curses are if somebody else outside of you says a bad thing about you, like speaks ungodly words about you, that can open a door to allow a demon to influence you. Sins committed against you is one that really infuriates me the most. They're going to get into sins committed against you later, so I'm not sure why they have the bullet points where they are, probably because they're a disorganized mess. But the sins committed against you and sins you commit both come into ungodly soul ties. And I won't go into in depth with it now. I'll hold my fury. I'll hold my fury. I'll just swallow it down for a minute so that we can progress, because I'll get into it more later.
How those are in fact an entry point for demonic torment in our life. Basically, our soul, where our mind, memory,
graphics on point, right,
and emotions reside, we have a soul tie with anyone that we have a bonding with. And you can see here in our picture the souls, if you like, there's kind of a joining together or a bonding of the souls that can happen. And there are two types of soul ties. There are godly soul ties, and there are ungodly soul ties. Godly soul ties, quite simply, are based upon love. And we see some examples in Scripture here. A husband and wife have a godly
sanctioned love. Sanctioned love. I shouldn't have paused yet, but I just need to make that perfectly clear. They're laying out what sanctioned love constitutes here, because there's ungodly love. They wouldn't count it as love, but this is sanctioned love that falls within the behavioral paradigm of what's allowed based on the mandated standard. Just let's make that clear.
Soul tie. In Ephesians 5:31, it says, "For this reason a man will leave his mother and his father, be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." Flesh is body and soul. Parents and children can have a godly soul tie. Genesis 44:30 talks about Jacob and Benjamin. It says that the boy's life was closely bound up with Jacob's life, and we can have a godly soul tie with friends. 1 Samuel 18:3 talks about the covenant with David. It says Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as he loved himself.
Okay, so I'll back up just a little bit. I paused a little too late. My pause game is not strong today. So going back to what I previously said regarding sanctioned love, they're setting out here what's an acceptable type of relationship to have. If you have a relationship that exists outside of this mandated paradigm, then you're opening yourself up for demonic torment. This is a fear tactic that's utilized in order to impose compliance. If you have one of these relationships, that's okay. You're going to get a positive soul tie from this. Like, this is the type of soul tie that God sanctions and will elicit positive responses. A husband, wife, parent, child, friends, so long as they're friends that are also godly and are acceptable. Those are okay. They set the standard very, very clearly so that you know that it's not just exposure to anybody. It's exposure to people who are other, to people who are outside of the in-group that behaves in the mandated fashion. Now, that's dangerous for a multitude of reasons that I'm sure are relatively apparent. But one of the reasons it's dangerous is because any one of these relationships could be a damaging relationship. But you're meant to see these relationships as intrinsically healthy. And that's not a great perspective to have, because if one of your problems comes from these relationships and they're deemed as the good relationships that you're supposed to intrinsically denote godly feelings from, like holy feelings from, good feelings from, their approach mutates. They need to find an additional scapegoat for that entry point, and generally it's you. So that doesn't necessarily have to do with the ungodly soul ties that we're going to get into, but it's just a point of contention for me, because nothing is this black and white. There's no such thing as a type of good relationship based on the label of that relationship, and a type of bad relationship based on the label of that relationship. There are healthy relationships and there are unhealthy relationships, and those can constitute any label. You can have a healthy husband and wife relationship, and you can have an unhealthy husband and wife relationship. You can have a healthy relationship with a friend who holds different belief standards than you, and you can have an unhealthy relationship with a friend who holds the same belief standards as you. It's very much a personal investment in how those relationships manifest. It has nothing to do with just the label and what their belief systems are. All right, so we'll go on. Sorry if I'm talking very fast when I'm frustrated. I talk really quickly, and these guys frustrate me so much. I don't know if you know how much of this nonsense I've consumed in the past year of my life. So more than anybody should. And I just really wish that there was somebody other than me that was talking about it, because it is so prevalent. And there's so many people who buy into it, and it is so damaging. People talk about religious damage, and they talk about it retroactively. They speak about it as though it's not something that's occurring now, or ubiquitously. And here's a very clear example of somebody who's monetized the ability to harm susceptible people, utilizing a religious agenda that forces them to conform to an unattainable standard in order to believe that they can achieve happiness. And that's what we all strive for and need help with. And the most susceptible amongst us are those who need mental health assistance, and they're being explicitly exploited in this scenario. They're the most susceptible amongst us, and the least likely to have advocates talking for them. Why aren't more people screaming? I'm going to get cryy. Why aren't more people screaming? This is the business model, a huge one. They're charging these people money to make their lives worse in the hopes that they'll make them better. More people should be screaming. This is garbage.
As he loved himself. Now, here's our soul tie again.
Graphics, man.
When we have ungodly soul ties with people,
Like
what we've
boobs.
seen is that the demonic spirits, if you like, or strongholds can transfer. Spirits can transfer from one person to another. We can pick up somebody else's spirits because of ungodly bondings. And
Okay. Let's look at their booby graphic again so that we can all take this in. So this is how you get an ungodly soul tie. Very informative infographic. Solid, right? Like 10 out of 10 execution. So how you can get an ungodly soul tie is through direct contact with someone that you formed a relationship with. No, that doesn't have to be a love relationship. It can be just the platonic sort of relationship. Doesn't even need to be a friendship. It can just be any sort of physical contact or interaction with somebody who's bad, somebody who wrong thinks, somebody who doesn't do things in a godly fashion. Somebody who speaks badly about you, somebody who you've spoken badly about, somebody who doesn't think the way that you do. If you make contact with those people, and not just physical contact, but verbal contact, if you interact with those people, you're opening yourself up. Now, put yourself in a position where you're somebody who needs mental health assistance for something like anxiety or for social interaction issues. Now, you're introduced to this model. You go for assistance. I'm going to use social interaction issues because I think that this will highlight it probably the most. If you have social interaction issues and you're suffering because, you know, you're lonely and you don't know how to fully engage people, you have somebody approach you, let's say, that's a good relationship for you but doesn't think like you or look like you or come from the same places as you. You have to isolate yourself from them if you ascribe to this model and are taking this advice and are seeking mental health assistance from this mental health model, air quotes again, mental health model, because it's not, it's trash. More damage has just been done to you because you are now segregating yourself more so. You're analyzing your potential relationships with an unfair standard that's detrimental to you, and in a constant state of additional anxiety. Like, you've now heightened your anxiety regarding potential relationships, which is what you were struggling with to begin with, is interaction and loneliness in relationships, because now you need to, before you can even engage in the preliminary stages of a relationship, you now need to assess whether or not that's an acceptable relationship based on arbitrary foolishness standards. Not whether or not this will be healthy for you, not whether or not this person provides things for you in an emotional way or a physical way. You have to determine whether or not this person is an acceptable person based on their belief systems, their background, every word they say. Like, that you have to scrutinize them to a degree that's unreasonable. You become more isolated. That's just one example. Like, there's many other examples. Like, imagine, for example, you were somebody who's homosexual or bisexual or pansexual, and you want to engage in a healthy, loving relationship. That's now entirely been cut off for you as an option. That's no longer on the table. That's it. That's done. Because that's not a mandated acceptable relationship to be in. Like, the stress would cause like a blowback. You would have more anxiety. You would have more internal emotional turmoil. It would snowball within you. And when you go back to them, they just tell you that's because you're thinking bad thoughts about these ungodly soul ties and you're allowing those demons back in. It's just a constant cycle of emotional torture. But it's an acceptable one people can charge money to put you through and pretend they're helping you. God, everybody just please scream. Like, these guys have more subscribers than me, and they're just one of them. Just one of them. I can't take them all on. I'm going to try, but God damn it.
spirits because of ungodly bondings, and those come about through two major ways. One comes about through sexual sin. It says in 1 Corinthians 6:16, Paul talks about sexual sin. He says, don't you know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said, the two will become one flesh. So sexual sin is an open door for demonic torment. Now, I need to add here, we're talking about ungodly soul ties, sins that we commit. There's also an element of an ungodly soul tie that happens with people who are abused or molested, and there's an ungodly sexually abused, if you like, or raped, if you like, and there's an ungodly soul tie that gets established there too that needs to get broken. But clearly that's not in those cases an instance of willful sin. So
Okay, I'm stopping here. Okay. So, if it's not abundantly clear, it's not just unacceptable or unmandated acceptable sexual relationships, consensual sexual relationships that will allow a demon into you that influences your thoughts, that requires exorcism or deliverance. Sorry, it's not exorcism because they don't see it as a spirit in possessing you. They see it as it influencing you, and there's a differentiation there. This is also the treatment that they utilize if you're a victim. So if you come to them for help because you're in a damaged mental state because you've been assaulted or raped, the first advice that they will give you is that you need deliverance because you've allowed through this endeavor, well, not allowed, there has been allowed since this happened to you for a demon to enter you and influence you. Now imagine being in that state after something that traumatic has happened to you and having a confused thought set. It's difficult to organize because of a lot of heightened emotions that are justifiable and reasonable that should be assessed and dealt with so that you can carry on a good and productive and valuable, worthwhile, important life. And you're told and believe that that thought set is taking place because this act allowed an ungodly soul tie that was an entry point for demonic influence. Now, you at that point with already disorganized thought patterns that are seriously affecting you are placed in a position where you no longer even have the perception of being able to gain control over those thought patterns. That's taken away from you. They counsel kids. So it's taken away from you. Now you go through this deliverance. So let's say you pay them the $75 for your profile system, and you go through the 7 sets of counseling and deliverance where they, say words over you and it's supposed to go away. And it doesn't go away and it doesn't change because nothing's been addressed. Or you get the temporary euphoria placebo effect of thinking it's changed because you get so psyched up about it working, and then you go right back to your old patterns. There's a massive, 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 massive risk to the person that this is happening to. You're victimized again, and you pay them like close to $1,000, more than $1,000, I think, by the time all the sessions are done. And that's just for your first set of deliverance. And if it doesn't work, you have to go back. Like, where are you mentally after that? Like, if these people were doctors, like, why don't we treat mental health with the same medical model? Like, if somebody was pretending to be a doctor, you wouldn't go into them because they were going to give you God's surgery. Like, why is it okay to do it when it comes to mental health? Why is it okay? Like, is it because people have this perception that the soul is somehow separate from them, and they don't recognize the brain as an organ that requires health care, and they see spiritual intervention as, something justifiable? Like, this falls in the realm of people's beliefs, right? So, you know, you can just do whatever there because, they think that the soul exists. So if that's the way they want to go, then that's the way they want to go. Like, you wouldn't do that in any other circumstances. Like, these are people that need help. And this is what they get. And they pay for it. And it's tax-free. And these people probably sleep well at night thinking they're doing God's work. Well, the person that they were supposed to help might be pushing closer towards suicide or damaging themselves after they've already been victims. Like, these people are susceptible. Like, scream with me. This is bullshit.
So that is one, though, when we do willfully involved in sexual sin, we do open a door for ungodly soul tie. And it's established. And then here's another type of ungodly soul tie. It gets established when we allow people basically to have ungodly control over us. Proverbs 22 verses 24 and 25 says that make no friendship with an angry man. With a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul.
That's more control over relationships. That's more behavioral control, mandating the type of relationships that you're allowed to have. Like, you can't have relationships outside of the specific theological model. Otherwise, you're making yourself susceptible. Like, it's pushing it back on you. Like, your interactions with people, your relationships with people, your family history, your thoughts, those are all something that you need to be accountable for, because you're allowing ungodly things to happen to you because you're not godly enough. You have to achieve the ridiculous standard of never thinking a bad thing, never talking to a bad person, being born into a correct family, I guess, in order to avoid these things. Nothing's dealt with, nothing's approached, but it's all your fault, and you have to pay us to get rid of it.
What does this mean? We can have an open door for demonic torment when we have people in our lives who are very controlling. And by that, typically, they have a spirit of control in their life. And we get ourselves in a position where we allow ourselves to be controlled by them. And those can be controlling family and friends, can involve the case of having abortions, ungodly soul ties, and even hypnosis. And there are many others. This is just a brief overview. And yes, we notice here with family and friends, we can indeed have an ungodly soul tie and a godly soul tie with the same person. But in terms of open doors for demonic torment, those ungodly soul ties need to be identified, and those soul ties need to be broken.
All right, so that's the end of their overview of what ungodly soul ties are from a Christian counseling perspective. So I thought that it would be beneficial to have a look at the theological perspective that feeds this model. So I looked through a bunch of stuff to try to find what seemed to encapsulate this the best, and I pulled it up. So here it is. So this is from a ministry. Ministry's up at the top. I'm not going to promote the ministry because screw them. And these Christian counselors from the NCCA are all attached to deliverance ministries. Now, a soul tie is like a linkage in the soul realm between two people. It links their souls together, which can bring forth both beneficial results and negative results. And this is the thing, it's ambiguous, right? Like, how do you determine what is a good or bad relationship? What is a good or bad interaction? What is a good or bad thought? It pushes you into a place where you need to appeal to them to let you know what a good standard of behavior is. It's a form of behavioral control, a dangerous form of behavioral control, because you're constantly, it's carrot stick. You're constantly chasing the outcome that it's not going to happen. It's not attainable. Like from an actual psychological perspective, none of the things that they're doing are actually going to fix the problems you're attempting to fix. They're not even addressing them. If anything, they're compounding them. They're making them worse and potentially even adding new problems on top of that. So when you are coming from a standpoint that this is what's going to work, and it never works, but it's constantly pushed back on you as the reason it's not working, it forms a dependency cycle where you keep having to go back and you keep blaming yourself for it not working, when really they're the ones failing you. The positive effect of a soul tie in a godly marriage, which is a marriage between one man and one woman, just in case anybody's not clear on that. I think that's probably relatively clear. In a godly marriage, God links two together, and the Bible tells us that they become one flesh. As a result of them becoming one flesh, it binds them together, and they will cleave onto one another in a unique way. The purpose of this cleaving is to build a very healthy, strong, and close relationship between man and woman. Soul ties can also be found in close, strong, or close friendships. That doesn't make any sense. They're not just limited to marriage, as we can see in King David and Jonathan. I love when they quote King David. King David, by the way, had a multitude of, this is what, they're contradictory even in their statements. Like, because King David, like, Bathsheba, anybody, multiple wives, just saying, killed a guy to get to, anyway, sent a guy to war so that he would die, so that he could have his wife to add to his harem. But his relationship with Jonathan, that's an example of purity. Like in this standard, because it's acceptable to us, that we're going to give that as a standard. And also, like, him and Jonathan might have been an ungodly soul tie there. I'm just saying. Might have been a little bit of an ungodly soul tie. They may have made contact. All right, and a negative effect of a soul tie. So this will give you an idea of what a negative effect of a soul tie is. And then I'll take some questions from anybody who has questions. This is why it is so common for a person to still have feelings towards an ex-lover, that they have no right to be, no right. You don't have a right to feel feelings. You have no right to be attracted to in that way. Even 20 years down the road, a person may still think of their first lover. Yeah, of course you do, because there was a strong neurological reaction. Like the amount of endorphins that are released when you have like that first relationship, it causes a strong memory connection from a neuroscience perspective. Like that's why you're intrinsically drawn back to that memory, because it sets a standard. Even 20 years down the road, blah, blah, blah. Even if he or she is across the country or has their own family, all because of a soul tie. No, it's not because of a soul ties. It's not. But ex-lovers are bad because you didn't marry them, but it formed a soul tie. Like you see what they're doing? Like this gives them an out. Like they have so many loopholes for why things are wrong. And it all ties back to you. You did a bad. You did a bad and you made this happen to you. God be pissed. The doors opened, the demons came in, you're behaving badly. You're on a spiritual timeout. That Holy Spirit that's in the center of you, you did such a bad that they can't even combat it. You did a bad. Bad you. Demonic spirits can take advantage of ungodly soul ties and use them to transfer spirits between one person to another. I remember one young man I led through a deliverance. He was facing severe demonic visitations and torment, all thanks to an ungodly soul tie. I led him to break. I'm assuming that's supposed to say break. I led him to break the soul tie and the attacks stopped completely. There's always an example, an unprovable, unreferenceable example. Anyway, so that's what's up with all of these ungodly soul ties, guys. So I'm sufficiently agitated, I think, at this point. I apologize for my demeanor. I tried to I didn't try to be impartial. I think it was very clear that I think that they're garbage, and I won't pretend that they're not. But I tried to present you the facts in a fair way. Please, as always, advocate for your own understanding. Look into this yourself. Make sure I'm not full of garbage. But keep in mind, if you are in America, the spiritual advisor to your president, this is the type of Christian she is. So, yeah, it's not isolated to a small independent group of people who think this way. There's an entire business model. There's multiple Christian counseling associations that ascribe to the same thing. It's a thriving, lucrative business. They sell degrees through a degree mill, and I don't like them. So, does anybody have any questions? And I do want to be clear that this isn't all counselors that are Christian. There's this very specific set of Christian counselors. There are other Christian counselors who I have my own critiques of. I'm going to be covering them more in the Christian counseling series that I'm doing. I'm currently reviewing literature on my next video, which is going to be on reparative, air quotes, reparative therapy and deconversion therapy. And it's taking a while, but I don't want to forget these guys because somebody needs to yell at them. All right. Deep breaths. Yeah. Deep breaths. I'm going to watch Doctor Who after this, and that'll make me happy. It was just on, I think. So I think my DVR was recording. It's not a business. It's a sham. Brilliant. Yeah, I would agree with that. Intellectual iconoclasm. Can we risk an ungodly soul tie to demons of queerness by having a cathartic viewing of But I'm a Cheerleader? I don't know what But I'm a Cheerleader is. You can't actually get ungodly soul ties through just impure or ungodly thoughts, though. They have to be about someone that you previously had a connection with that you haven't had deliverance from. Like, it's a very intricate model they have. It's crazy. So just the thought itself could open you to could open the doors to demonic influence. And there's very specific demons too. Like one day I'll go through the types of demons that you can get as many as I can, because that's a trip and a half. I'm obsessed with these guys. Like I hate watch them like nobody's business. I don't think that there's a video that these idiots have put out that I haven't seen twice. The first time just to yell and the second time to listen. But if you had an ungodly soul tie with somebody, then you can activate that demon, or it's that demon activating those thoughts. Like it's not entirely clear. It's circumstantial. Depends on who you're talking to and what kind of bullshit they're spewing. What kind of oversights exist to monitor counseling services in Canada or the US? That's a very good question, Saka. Also, I love Saka. Hi, Saka. I love you. Saka's one of the most fascinating people to listen to for me. Like, he makes philosophical jargon really digestible for me. So I very much enjoy listening to Saka Count. So if you watch my actual Christian counseling series, the very first video, it's called How to Be a Christian Counselor. The very first one I did, explained in detail because there's a lot of nuance to this. But essentially, and I went through this in my last video too, the oversight for NCCA certified Christian counselors, because of how counseling works in the United States, is actually a ministry. So you are attached to a church. You are allowed to open an independent practice that's in a building that's even separate from the church, but your oversight is the church. In order to be a Christian counselor, you have to be involved in ministry in some way. Now, they have this entire manual telling you how you can be involved in ministry. Like, you don't actually have to be involved in ministry. You can be a deacon of administration, which essentially means that you just volunteer once a year to file papers at a church. And you too can be a NCCA certified PhD in Christian counseling and open an independent practice, and the church allows you the oversight. There's not many unfortunately, there's too many churches, but not every church is going to agree to be your oversight. If that's the case, there's a handy dandy pamphlet that they give you that tells you how to register your own ministry so you can you can be your own oversight. You open a ministry, and that ministry practice just has to meet the minimum standard to be constituted as a ministry practice in the state where you operate, and they'll help you with that too. And then you can be your own oversight and operate with impunity with a PhD on your wall that says, I'm a PhD in Christian counseling, and you can run around calling yourself doctor, even though that PhD is from a degree mill. All right, so I'm going to scroll up to get some more questions. It's a movie about intellectual iconoclasm again. About reparative therapy camp. It's in-your-face satire, like RuPaul teaching how to be a butch man. Oh, I should look at that at some point in time. All right. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on because the ring light shines off of them. Here, I'll show you because it looks bananas. That's why I'm leaning in. It looks crazy. So I'm sorry if I'm leaning in. Silk X666. If one of those counselors caused someone to become very depressed and then suicidal, would they end up in court? Something tells me they absolutely would not. They wouldn't, because the way that their counseling practice is standardized, it's seen as ministerial counseling, and ministerial counseling has an exemption. There is no oversight. There's no standards and practices. Like if you want to go see a regular counselor, they have state sanctioned oversight that requires them to have like a minimum standard of hours that they can prove that they've put in, that they had some oversight, that they've gone to additional trainings, that they're keeping their degrees up to date, and they're with new information. These guys don't have to do any of that. They just slap their online PhD that they got on the wall, and off they go, charging whatever there's suggested prices, but they can charge whatever they want. And they're 501c3s, so they're tax exempt. Time for a drink, Shannon. Yeah, I know. Well, it's Sunday. I have to work early in the morning, so I'm having lime diet Pepsi this evening. But maybe while I'm watching Doctor Who, I'll put some rum in the next one. Brantley, I'm driving recklessly. Take my money. Thank you. Please don't drive recklessly. Do not super chat and drive, please. Please. Oh, no problem, Saka. I'm happy to answer. Does anybody else have any questions for me? Is there anything that I missed in the way of questions before I jump off? Hopefully people are enjoying the series. There is a lot more to cover. This is just one aspect of their mental health model, and it's bad. I wish I had time to do a 3-hour stream to go over one of their podcasts one day. Maybe I'll do that as a fundraiser or something for a mental health association in the state of Florida where these assholes operate. Because it's bad. They even go into school, like they have a partnership. Oh, I could wax on and on and on about why I hate these jerks. Like they have a partnership with this institution that actually goes into schools. Like they get around the school system in the state of Florida by organizing these groups that volunteer in some capacity in the school. So they'll go into the school as a volunteer, as an administrator, or they'll volunteer to coach a sports team, or they'll volunteer not coach a sports team, sorry, because it can't be directly interacting with the children. They'll volunteer to do janitorial duties or in the cafeteria or whatever. They'll just volunteer in the school. Then they have like this playbook that they'll form relationships with kids. Like they'll feel out the kids and they'll form relationships with those kids, and they'll convince those kids to open up clubs in the school to propagate their message. And that's all legal too, because they're just chit-chatting with the kids. And then when the kids are interested, they say, hey, you know what? I know a lot about opening up clubs. And they give them the information about how to open up the club. And then they provide them with free information to use in the club. It's bonkers. They had a whole podcast about it. Like, they don't care. They're brazen. It's so legal. It's bananas. Like, America, what the, why, how? Like, these people, oh, holy shit. I think I got more questions. Have you considered the possibility of Christian counseling imbuing the idea of these faults would exacerbate bullying's negative effects? Yes, actually, Prince of Atheism, that's a good point. I actually hadn't explicitly thought about that, but their series that they did on cutting brought some of those things to mind. They did a series, a multitude series, and a series of articles, podcasts, and videos on why demons are causing your children to cut. That I was going to do a video on, but I didn't know if I could. I didn't know if I could. Yeah. But yes, potentially it could. Potentially it could. Oh, I have more super chats. Thank you for the super chats. Duke Bonanza. Oh, hi, Duke. We're friends on Facebook. Please DM me more on this so I can follow up on it. I'm in Florida. I don't even know what you could do aside from like reaching out to a congressman. Like, I don't know enough about the U.S. laws. All I know is researching this, I found out how they got around them. So I know enough about the laws, especially in Florida, to understand how they got around them. And it's all about the separation of church and state, right? Like, that's how they do it. Because of the separation of church and state. Because they're essentially seen as autonomous bodies that can just operate with impunity and just do whatever the fuck, so long as it's under the guise of ministerial practice. And like, they know how to skirt the line. Like, they research the legislation. They have lawyers that like are members of their little group that like research the ways that they can just skirt the line to garner influence and recruit members. Like, and they hand out these, like, in the groups, they hand out, like in the schools, Christian counseling information, and they'll give out free sessions and shit. So they'll get like the parents to come and bring the kids to the Christian counselors, and they'll do like a priming session with them where it seems like counseling, they make them feel good, and then they'll put them through deliverance. It's just like, it's a gateway to get them into this behavioral control that marries them to this specific theological perspective through emotional abuse and manipulation. And it's a for-profit business, and it's legal. You're awesome. I'm glad you're doing this. Thanks, Duke. I don't feel awesome. I wish there was somebody smarter and more articulate than me doing this. I do much better when I'm doing recorded videos because I have time to process my thoughts. When I get frustrated and sad, I tend to talk very rapidly. So, apathetic empath. Get the Church of Satan to do this only with real counselors. Yeah, I would love that. But it would be very difficult to get real counselors to open a and like, this is a for-profit counseling session. Like, you would have to take counselors away from. I don't know how that would work. It's a good idea. Maybe I should reach out to them if they do stuff like that, because god damn it, like, they're so prevalent. They're everywhere. Like, just type in deliverance ministry and Christian counseling or NCCA, like anywhere on the internet, and it's like boom, 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 boom. They're frigging everywhere. Hurting people. I second that. All right. Red's Rhetoric lives in Florida. He might be able to help. If he can help, tell him to reach out to me. I'll take all the help I can get. Because somebody needs to do something. But I don't even know what can be done. I'm just going to keep making people aware of it. Like, that's all I can do, is just scream about it. How can someone have a relationship with someone who doesn't know how to be in love or feel that emotion? You can definitely have a relationship with somebody who doesn't know how to feel love. I think you might be talking about somebody who's psychopathic. You could, but it would be hard. A lot of people think it's sociopathy, but it's not. Sociopaths feel emotions not quite in the same way. They just don't feel empathy. Inquisitive Quandary, you're not feeling awesome, Shannon Q. I'm not. You're doing awesome. Thanks for taking the hit to push awareness. I appreciate all of you. Thank you for coming and listening to my public nervous breakdown. Hopefully, I was able to disseminate some valuable information, and it seems as though I managed to do so without screwing up any of the audio. So maybe I do deserve a drink because that's the first time in a long time I haven't had any audio complaints. So pat on the back for me. And if you guys have any questions, you can find me on Twitter. I wouldn't suggest it because it's a dystopian wasteland over there. And I appreciate you guys watching. Help spread the word if you can. I wish I had better advice. I wish I knew what to do, except for if you know somebody who's influenced by this, perhaps expose them to some of my more coherent content. Or if you're aware of other content creators or people who are combating this foolishness, let me know so that I can put my heads together with them regarding what could be done or how to get this information out with a little bit more prevalence. Oh, Duke again. That one more super chat. I don't even know. Thanks, Duke. Anything you have would help. Just save me some research time. Just send me the links. All right, I will. Probably not tonight. So everybody, thank you. I very much, as always, appreciate you guys for tuning in. And as always, help elevate the discourse. Thank you guys. Have a good night.